Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, another session of the digital event, and I've got four heavyweights here of the industry, so I'm really looking forward to getting their feedback, their input, and their comments. And the four I'm talking about are Peter Penseel, Chief Operating Officer, Air Freight for CEVA Logistics; Robert Fordree, Executive Vice President, Cargo, Menzies Aviation; Dennis Lister, VP Cargo Commercial Development, Emirates Airlines; and Thomas Mack, Executive Vice President, Global Air Freight, DHL Global Forwarding. So, guys, lovely to have you on board.
Good morning.
That's it. That's the best morning greeting I've had for a long time. That was really up and at 'em, lads. Fantastic.
What I will say, Chris, is can I refer to myself as perhaps a middleweight as opposed to a heavyweight? I think that suits my build a little bit better.
Yeah, fair play. Yeah, fair play. Yeah, we won't touch that. There was no intention there when I said heavyweights, by the way, because if anything, I'm probably the heaviest of us all. But let's not go there, Rob. But anyhow, I remember those lightweight days, mate. Now, lads, customer. All right, and everybody, the two or the several words that keep being bandied around now is collaboration, which is overused, and it seems to be a lot of rhetoric rather than reality, but it's a nice word. And the title of the conference this year is Bring Back Better, which is also an overused term, but also make it matter. Now, there's lots of lovely buzzwords. There's been lots of good things that have happened, but this whole pandemic and the impact on our business has stretched us now a lot further than most people knew. Now, as far as customer service is concerned, for anybody in cargo now, things are going well. Rates are high. Everybody wants space, but are they really getting customer service? And what is customer service in a time of crisis? So that's one of the things that I want to touch base with you. So now, what I'd like firstly from each of you, do you feel that the level of customer service that's being given now is what you would like it to be, in all honesty?
Shall I start, Chris?
It would be great if somebody would.
Good, then I will kick off. No, I think it's a fair comment, and you get the feedback from a lot of customers in a pandemic situation. You guys are using that too long and too often, and you are not delivering for what we are paying, and that's always related to the prices that the market is asking to get, in our case, capacity. And that is also the feedback we are giving the airlines, and the airlines are giving that feedback. I strongly believe that due to the fact that also a lot of people working from home is used as an excuse not to deliver the service that we need to deliver. So I'm 100% convinced that we as a company have to upspike our services when it comes to communication towards the customers to a higher level. Are we doing a bad thing? I don't think so, but I think there is room for improvement, especially when it comes to negative feedback, because I also believe that together with your customers, you can find a solution even by telling them a negative story rather than not telling them anything, because I think it's a joint effort in times that, yes, capacity sometimes is an issue. So you need the right planning to uplift your cargo for your customers. Nevertheless, I think there needs to be an improved level of communication and dedication when it comes to customer service in general.
Okay, thanks very much, Peter. Lads, anybody else want to add to that?
So maybe from me, Chris, I see it slightly differently. So from the handler's point of view, you said before that cargo's booming for everybody at the moment, and we're certainly seeing something similar on the handling side. What I will say is that we've got some outstanding people that have got their own sort of mission to deliver the best possible customer service. And actually what we're seeing across some of our stations in the network is those people getting really frustrated that they're unable to deliver the best service because we're seeing congestion in some ports. We're seeing, excessive amounts of cargo, and therefore in some cases we're unable to deliver exactly what we want to be able to deliver. And we're actually seeing the impact on our people. Some of them are getting very frustrated, some anxious. We're seeing sort of mental health and well-being challenges from some of our team, because they're just frustrated that they can't deliver what they want to deliver. So I think that's the first point from our perspective on the handling side. The second is the resource pool that we have to fish in, let's say, is much smaller than it ever was before. So we are seeing a number of people move away from working in the handling side. There's lots of competition out there for the resources, and being able to attract the right people is challenging. And we've often said that bringing new people in, the most important thing is that we train them properly. And we have been doing that for some time. Now we're in a position where we've got overstretched and very busy teams that are frustrated that they can't deliver the level of customer service that they want to, at the same time as having to coach and support and train new entrants into the business as well. So not quite a perfect storm, but it certainly delivered a few different challenges for us at this stage.
Yep. Good. I'll come back to that shortly, Rob. And now, Tom, Dennis.
I have to agree with Peter. I think from a customer point of view, if you're looking at the overall rates that we have today in the market and that we consequently charge to our customers, overall, the expectations from our customers are for sure not met, and there are reasons. There is a reason, staff shortage, that is not only on the ground handler side, but that is also on our side, on the forwarder side, that is on the trucking side, and so on. We do have a staff shortage. There are reasons for that. I think other industries in the meantime increase their wages, so that we have today we have more competition if we are hiring people, particularly on the blue collar, but also on the white collar side. And then overall, as an explanation, but that of course is not something that the customer wants to hear. First, we had a significant drop in the volumes, so everybody adjusted their infrastructure, and then we had a dramatic spike in the volumes, and that puts a constraint on the infrastructure that is still, of course, with significant shortcomings in capacity. A lot of the long haul flights didn't come back. Even so, airlines added flights. They did not go back to the old level. Let's say if you have a flight from Chicago to London today, you used to have 20 flights. Today you maybe have 5 flights. So that all adds up, that overall the delays we see in the network, be that on the ground handling side, be that on the carrier side, and definitely also on the forwarding side, are adding up. And if you compare that then, or if you put that in comparison then to the rates that are in the market today, I understand a certain frustration on the customer side. No? So understanding it is one thing, fixing it is another thing.
Yeah.
That will definitely take some time in order to improve our infrastructure, improve the staffing, and so on and so on. But we are definitely working on that. And I think the whole industry is working on that.
Yeah, no, fair enough there, Tom. Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, I mean, just to tap in there, I guess if I listen to Mack and Peter on the customer feedback, I think it's completely spot on. I think for us, a key thing is actually listening to our customers. And if you just look at the industry in the last 2020 was challenging across the entire aviation industry. So this was the entire end-to-end supply chain came under massive attack. I mean, Tom touched on the point of capacity being pulled from the network. Significant capacity came out globally from the passenger fleets across all airlines. We've seen some airlines go bust. So there's been quite an impact. However, I would say, and I mean this, talking to customers and partners has allowed us to actually adapt and evolve and change through this difficult time. So if you look at, particularly from a carrier or Emirates perspective, it really gave us an opportunity to redefine ourselves very quickly. I mean, it's the first time in history that our entire passenger fleet was grounded in March 2020. So there was a real opportunity equally from a cargo perspective to really go from a pure passenger operation with some freighters to a cargo operation. So we learned a lot in the last year. I must say we made mistakes, but at the end of the day, within 100 days, we're flying to 100 destinations. And I think there were other carriers doing the same thing. So I think it comes down to logistics, resilience, being in the position to utilize, as Rob said, your people, getting the best out of your people, and listening to customers. At the end of the day, there definitely was spikes in terms of rates. We saw capacity be constrained. We still see capacity be constrained today. So I think it's about really working with our customers and trying to ensure that the customer satisfaction and service remains intact, remains in place. But it is challenging, without question, specifically now as we get into the peak of this year.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, one of the reason I started with that question, and just to put things in perspective, there's a really, really nice pub that's got a great restaurant close to me that I've been going to, and similar things happen. Chefs were leaving, people that were in the hospitality, they were looking at other industries, they were looking at what they could do to keep their own ecosystem going along. So they decided to change the menu on certain days. So you knew that you were going to get a very simple menu and for a shorter time, and then on other days you knew you were going to get the full menu. Now they really adapted, but they're facing some terrible, terrible times. And obviously inflationary pressures now with salaries and different types of training. Now, what I just want to ask you guys, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Tom and Peter, as far as customer service is concerned within your particular backyard, lots of the forwarders now are looking to secure their own capacity rather than going the traditional way. Now, what are the main reasons? Why is it that you're doing that?
Let's me get. Oh, sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. No, what I would like to say about that, it is not that we want to have our own capacity as a starting grid, because I think in my organization we would love to utilize our commercial carriers and to make commitment to our commercial carriers, but we also have commitment to our customers. When our carriers cannot support, for whatever reason, the pandemic, stopping of the passenger aircraft, the rerouting freighters, we have an obligation what we sold to our customers. So as when the pandemic started, we need to step in to make sure that we have our network available for our customers. Again, it's not that it is a primary task for us to start operating our own flights or our own aircrafts or whatever. No, it's driven by the market and the commitment we gave to our customers. So it's more like a reaction on a development that took place that made us feel that we have to inject capacity, own controlled capacity in the market to serve our customers.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Peter. Tom?
But that is on our side, it's more or less the same. The reason is if you lose, let's say, 40% of your capacity on the passenger side, and you maintain the same volumes, then you need to do something, and that means you go over to the freighter side, and there, of course, because you lost 40-50% of the capacity on the pack side, you have a significant higher demand for the freighters. It's relatively easy for you to fill that up, and of course, we are in obligation to secure the capacity for our customers. So that was the chain reaction that you had. The loss of the passenger capacity led to the fact that we went over to the freighter side, and now and here, because we had significantly less capacity available on the pack side, we can fill up the whole freighters. So we take the whole freighter in order to control it and offer our customers solutions. So that goes hand in hand with what Peter mentioned.
Okay, fine. And coming, thank you very much, Tom. And Dennis, as far as carrier is concerned, obviously prior to the pandemic, there was a certain little bit of pressure on the business anyhow, and now all of a sudden it's turned. But if you were to define the importance of value products and volume products, how do you think that's going to pan out now as the pandemic starts to ease off and people start to open up, their own countries' borders and corridors?
So I do think it comes back to the whole, if you look in terms of the whole topic on capacity, and there's definitely constraints, we know that. If you look at the current fleet we operate today, is a mix of 777s and A380s. We even utilize some of the A380s, believe it or not, as freighters. Even some of our large customers have used these on the call today. So the thing is, I think there's a delineation between what we consider as, call it general cargo versus niche cargo or special cargo. So I think there is a difference between sort of volume versus value to customers. I think at the end of the day, all customers want the best service at the best rate. But the reality is there is only a finite amount of capacity. And, to the earlier point, I listened to Tom and Peter, more to them. At the end of the day, there's a definite need for more capacity. The demand is just soaring at the moment. So more capacity, the better. But I do think what it does start doing for us is, number one, I think we have to stick to our commitments. That's really important. So we have a commitment or a BSA or a locked agreement with a certain customer, wherever that trade lane is, we have to do our very best as an airline to meet that commitment to our partners. So, in this case, it's Peter and Tom on this call. So that's important, but it goes wider to all our customers globally. We have to try and meet those commitments. But there will come a time when you don't always have sufficient capacity to carry everything that comes your way. So we've actually seen an increase in niche products. So if you start looking at some of the products we offer, whether it's pharma is a great example. There was a massive demand for the PPE and pharma and vaccines sort of ramping up to the end of last year, and then more so in Q1 this year. So there is the process of triage to some degree, where you basically have to decide, well, number one, what trade lanes are we going to operate? So it's really balancing the demand, and we are a hub through Dubai. It's also then managing that demand from Dubai out to the rest of the world. It's sort of east-west flow, and then also north-south. So it's also working with our customers to decide the higher priority, the stuff that is critical. Those things are not independently decided by us as a carrier. That's also in collaboration with our partners, because at the end of the day, they pay the bills, right? So we need to talk to our customers to say, well, what is a priority? And if it's the volume cargo, whether it's general cargo, whether it's e-commerce or volume cargo versus carrying a premium product, whether it's aircraft and ground or, the pharma products, that delineation needs to be worked out, and that triage process needs to kick in. But it's not a isolation discussion with the carrier. I think there's multiple conversations, multiple partners involved to decide what takes priority in the aircraft.
Okay, very good. Now, Rob, can I come back to one of the points you made earlier about training and pressures being put on the employees? Do you feel in the same vein that there's a recognition by carriers and the industry itself as to what the GHA does when it comes to volume and value and the pricing that can be achieved from that?
That's like throwing the hand grenade into the room there, Chris, with a challenge like that. So do I think the carriers recognise that? Yes, much more so than they did before, I would say. And certainly with some of our more global customers, we're having very, very sensible conversations about what can be achieved, what they're looking for, what sort of service we're able to deliver, what sort of timelines we can work on, and that kind of thing. So we're having much more transparent and honest and open conversations than we ever did before, largely as a result of the pandemic. We're having the opportunity to talk to them about schedules that if you're scheduling a freighter or you're scheduling a passenger freighter, there isn't the same degree of focus on arrival and departure times as there would be a passenger aircraft with passengers on. So we are seeing flexibility with carriers working with us on optimum flight schedules and reducing peaks of operation as well. So it's certainly, the dialogue and the engagement is certainly significantly better than it has been before, and a very sensible approach from most.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you for that. And on top of that, Rob, all four of you play different parts in this relay team that's looking for success. Do you think there are areas where each of you could focus on the critical side of things? Because at the moment, everybody's looking cash flow, they're looking at just continuing, because who knows how things are going to pan out over the next 3, 6, 9 months. But touch wood, please God, everything's going to get a lot better than it is now. But nobody really knows. So is there a chance that all of you could actually look, if you had the chance to say, right, if I was in charge of the entire supply chain or the process, what could I do that would make everybody else's job easier? And if everybody did a bit of that, do you think there's an opportunity to use this now to really change all of the old, you know, the protection and the blaming or the finger pointing? And two words that I think are very destructive in any part of our business is they and them. And, you know, is there a chance now for people to really say, right, let's just focus on what's critical, make some quick changes, and then see how it pans out?
So look, there's always opportunity to be able to do that, and we'd love to, you know, it would be a much easier world if we were able to sit in a room collectively with representation from each part of the logistics chain and say, let's work this out together. The reality is it's very challenging to do that, and just perhaps giving one example. So what we've seen recently is in China, sort of outbreaks and backlogs of cargo in some of the gateways coming out of China. And for us, handling in the US, for example, in Dallas and Los Angeles, we are now seeing massive influxes of cargo. You know, we've gone from maybe 2 or 3 freighters a week to 10 or 12 freighters a week. And that's adding huge pressure on the warehouse capacity that we have available to us. And again, for example, in Los Angeles, a lot of the cargo that's coming into Los Angeles is actually not destined for Los Angeles, it's destined for other US ports, which means it needs to be trucked to those other US ports. And what we're seeing is that the trucking infrastructure in the US doesn't support that volume, and there's a lack of drivers. So what we're seeing then is a massive influx of cargo from China into the US, pressure on our warehouse facilities, pressure on the trucking partners, pressure on forwarders to collect cargo as quickly as possible. And some of the forwarders are saying, my facility's full, I've got nowhere to collect that and move it to. So it's kind of log jams. And what we've done in working closely with the carriers and the forwarders in Los Angeles is try and streamline that process. So, you know, we're doing deliveries on certain days. Some forwarders are able to collect from the aircraft even. And that just alleviates the pressure that's put on the whole logistics chain. Now, that's just one route and 2 origins and destinations across the whole global logistics chain. Yes, we're working closely with the people that we're able to engage with, but at the same time, there are thousands more trade lanes and opportunities out there as well. And we simply can't get to all of those to manage them as effectively as we are with some of the ones that are much more high profile. So, so I think yes, the answer to your question, yes, we could do a lot more in working much closer together. But at the same time, the complexity associated with that makes it very, very challenging.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much, Rob. Now, Tom and Peter, some airports are a lot more pro cargo than others, and historically, we never really got the you know, on the first place on the podium in many areas. Now all of a sudden, people are realizing the importance of cargo, and I'm sure when extra capacity comes back, some will slip back. Now, are you guys looking at more, should we say, pro cargo areas which alleviate many of the problems that Rob just brought up there?
Yeah, good. For on our side, if you take Los Angeles as an example, that's a perfect example. I think that airport has not invested in an infrastructure probably in the last, whatever, 20 or 30 years, something like that. No, I used to work out there in the 90s and the late 80s, and nothing has changed. So they did not invest in that. Now look at other airports that are focused on cargo. They do invest. And one of the problems that Robert mentioned is the infrastructure, and that has nothing to do with the ground handler. The ground handler can only use the infrastructure that is provided by the airport. Now, in Los Angeles, that is a very inefficient infrastructure. So yes, we will focus on airports, on other airports, on airports that are investing in infrastructure geared to cargo, in order also to take the pressure off an infrastructure that you have, for example, in Los Angeles. You know, that is out of, I would almost call it desperation. Out of desperation, we are looking for alternatives. We're using alternatives. And I honestly don't think that we will switch back. Once we have it established, we will maintain at these airports. So that is not only a short-term solution, but that will be a longer-term solution where we are using, where we will use infrastructure that is more geared towards the cargo handling. And that also makes the life easier for a ground handler, of course.
Yep. No, fair play, Tom. Absolutely. And Peter?
No, I think Tom touched on the point on the infrastructure and on certain airports that is really below any levels of the 2021 that we are talking about. But also you see, and Rob is in the call, and he is also often confronted that freight forwarders are selecting carriers on the contract they have with the ground handler, because that is always brought, and in the time, and I started in the industry in 1988, as long as I'm in the industry, this discussion is taking place. And still in the air freight industry, we are lacking behind on making concrete changes. We spoke about in the beginning about digital air bill, digital cargo, but we see it still today on the ground handler side. When warehouses on the tarmac side are not sufficient, we have to transfer the capacity of handling with customs in certain airports are not there. And now we are talking about capacity that we are buying from commercial carriers. And that's why there is now a separation in our decision making. If we operate our own freighters, we can be flexible to operate to airports we believe that can make a turnaround of 2.5 to 3 hours for big aircrafts, rather than we have to wait 5, 6, 7 hours before we even start offloading our aircraft. And that is becoming more and more critical, because an aircraft, they need to be in the sky for at least 15 hours a day. If you operate your own scheduled network, what we are doing now, and what a lot of our competitors are doing, the aircraft need to be in the air to make money and to serve the needs of our customers. So yes, Chris, the need to make the right decisions when it comes to an airport / handling facility will be bigger and bigger.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Maybe Chris, I can just add a further comment here. I don't want to make this all about cargo handling and ground handling, but just agreeing with both Tom and Peter there. We're having much better conversations with airports than we've ever had before. There's a number of airports that have indeed woken up to cargo. If we look at the traditional gateways, cargo gateways, different situation, but there are lots of airports, particularly in the US, that we're now talking to who are making capacity available, warehouse capacity available. It's suboptimal at the moment, but they're certainly making warehouse capacity available to help. And then longer term development opportunities. And we're working with a number of developers on new builds in effectively in new airports. And I think I cannot disagree with Tom and Peter in their comments as well. We're seeing congestion in some of the major gateways, and this is cargo handling in general. It's not just Menzies Aviation, but when you have import cargo that is taking longer to be retrieved by the customer than it takes to fly from the origin to the destination, something is wrong in terms of the logistics chain, and that's exactly what we are trying to manage through at the moment, which is why other airports, I think, will have a really great opportunity to pick up the volumes, which I don't see reducing for some time yet.
Yeah, no, I agree, Rob, and I think the next major change now that's an opportunity for us all is from airports and GHAs together, influencing opportunities and that ecosystem to make carriers and everybody else want to come into that particular airport. And I think that's where the biggest change is going to come. Now, Dennis, your experience and also what's happened in Dubai, they've always been pretty forward thinking and trailblazers. How do you see now some of the emphasis and the way things have changed from an airport that's trying to balance and trying to grow as fast as Dubai did, and with the alternatives there with DWC, etc. How do you now see the next stages of an airport taking a much bigger part in what happens as far as solutions and addressing the challenges that we're facing?
So, Chris, look, I think investments make sense, right? Investments do pay off, and sometimes you only see those benefits like a year to 2 years, maybe, and sometimes 5 years later. I mean, we've made significant investments here in Dubai years ago in terms of various products, whether it's our sea air product or whether it's been our farmer solution. We have seen the benefits of those, and our customers have seen the benefit of those as well. I think unfortunately, we are in this end-to-end supply chain. So you've got multiple partners in there, and therefore you could have different points which can create a breakage or an area of weakness. So I think it's important that we work together. Now, I would say, looking at Dubai specifically, I'll give you one example. It's just interesting that we touch on, working with partners. I think one of the key things is also not just looking at the airport, but you have to look at the seaports too. So I'll give you an example where we worked with, for example, the port here in Dubai, in Jebel Ali, and if you just wind the clock back about a year and a half ago, it was taking anything from 1 to 2 days, up to 48 hours from the time the vessel arrived at the stack yard, getting it ready for departure at Dubai International Airport. We had to work with DP World. We had to work with the different port authorities to try and find out why is it taking so long, because it's a really long time to get that done. So it does require investing time with people, not just the infrastructure, but also creating solutions. You kind of need to have that sort of generative mindset. You cannot just sit there and hope that someone's going to create solutions. You have to be part of the solution. So part of that solution for us in the sea air routing at the time, which just became perfect, was we managed to get it down from 48 hours to 180 minutes, which is basically just simplifying a very old process. And even in my time here working with DHL more than 10, 15 years ago, we're talking 48 hours. And now to a point where we do it in 180 minutes, that simply comes from working with different partners, putting in things like a bonded truck as Emirates, right? So we say to our customers, you don't need to put a truck in anymore. We will actually create a bonded custom solution corridor between Jebel Ali Port and the airport. There's some very practical things we can do to try and create efficiencies. And I think those examples can be spread across the world. There's different solutions for different airports, for different GHAs. In some cases, you will gain a lot. In some other cases, per Thomas's point, some airports won't change for a long time. But there is a need for people to want to work together. And I think, Chris, one more point is the whole topic on digitalization. How do we actually use the digital platform as an enabler? I don't think it's entirely a solution on its own, but it's finding ways and means of how do we actually get data to the authorities, to the regulation, to the customs authorities, and that sort of those entities, to ensure that we can actually have faster clearances, faster time to customer. Those are the things we need to be thinking about. So I don't think there's enough attention on that. We've been talking about e-airwayable for the last 20, 30 years, and I still think we're talking about it today. So how do we actually get beyond that? I think in cargo, we tend to be a bit slower than maybe on the passenger side. So I think there's work to be done on the digital front, not just on the operational and sort of the real practical aspects. So there's a combination of both those aspects coming together.
Yeah, no, very good, and a nice segue there into digitization and data. But coming back to Tom, Peter, and Robert, I do not understand, and I've been on panels and I've been with you, Robert, within IATA and everything. This paperless and the airway bill. Why on earth can an industry like ours not say, from such and such a date, this isn't going to be accepted anymore? And if it has to be accepted for an interim period, that you put a very, very, very high price on those that won't do it. Why can we not do it as quickly as possible, guys? You're all three of you on. That's it. Well done, Tom. Thank you.
That is a very good question, and I believe that one of the reasons behind that is because we have so many parties involved. So it's not only the forwarder, it's not only the airline and the ground handler. It is also customs that is involved in the paperless. It is the regulations that you have in every country. And then you're looking at, let's say, 140, 150 different countries. You're looking then at 150 different customs regulations, and you're looking at, I don't know, let's say 300, 400 forwarders, 120 airlines. So there is a significant higher complexity versus if you look at an integrator. An integrator is doing that on his own. An integrator dealing with e-commerce has in general a special arrangement with customs. So I think one of the reasons is the complexity. Another reason is the investment that you need on all ends. And of course, every forwarder has a different software that needs to be coordinated. The airlines work with different softwares and the ground handlers work with different software. So I think the complexity in our industry versus if you look at an integrator is significantly higher. And that is something that we need to overcome. And then yes, there is also we are a little bit sluggish on that, and that would be one of the wishes that I have in the future, the seamless information flow. And if I use the example from Robert before, if you have now 20 freighters or 10 freighters, whatever the example is, coming into LA, normally that should not come as a surprise to him. He should have that already at least a day in advance from the forwarder, the notification that we are getting ready to send an aircraft over. Then as soon as we have the aircraft departed, he should get the final loading manifest. So he should know what is on that aircraft, and he should also know where is it going to. Is it going to stay in LA? Is it going to be distributed by truck and so on? And that is today not happening. And that is something definitely that we need to work. And I think that is one of the lessons we learned now out of that crisis. That is the information that needs to go mandatory, not only to the airline, but also it needs to go to the ground handler in order to do the staff planning, and then also, of course, the infrastructure planning, let's say for the truck and so on and so on. And there is definitely a significant, massive room for improvement. And that is something we learned out of the crisis now, where we will focus this year and next year on. That is the seamless information flow and the digitization of our industry.
Tom, I understand and I agree with what you're saying. It reminds me of a story when, and the British are not the best at change, as you've seen from Brexit and a few earlier examples. But one of the things that reminded me is when we changed currency, we went to decimal, and they had a feature on this old lady who used to go to the grocery store, and she always used to buy her potatoes from the same guy. And when she went in on the Monday morning after the change, she asked for a pound of potatoes. And he said, no, Mrs. Smith. He said, it's all changed now. He said, it's now kilos. And she said, okay, give me a pound of kilos. And people just don't change quick enough. But as long as we keep this complexity, we're opening the doors for another disruptor to come in and do things differently. So, you know what I'm saying? I think this now better than any time, because the incentives, you've got the hygiene issue with the paper. You've got the green issue with the paper. You've got so many reasons as to why we should all now make that effort and do something that people would say, at last, you know, and we should push people now. And I was talking to Courtney Robinson from ICAO, and he's an incredibly intelligent man. And, you know, he must have been looking at me as if I was on opposite ends of Darwin's scale, but we were talking about some of the issues. And, you know, and what he was saying is that everybody in the industry needs to lobby and they need to leverage with the states so that the states give ICAO the opportunity then to then push things into place. And, you know, we've got to do this, because otherwise I'm just trying to think, you know, my grandchildren, if they say to me, what was the biggest thing that never happened in your career? And I turn around and say, we couldn't get rid of a paper airway bill, I think it would be terrible. So, you know, I really do think we've got to move on. Now, from Dennis's point about digitization, another thing, everybody talks about collaboration and data sharing, and data-driven decision-making has got to be at the forefront. But you look at all of the messages, and I've got one here from yesterday's newspaper, and it says, the number one thing I hear from the many CEOs and CIOs I talk to is that they don't feel ready for democratization of data because they don't trust employees to make the right decisions using it. But equally, there's a fear factor within our own community that, you know, we'll give certain things, but we won't give as much as we possibly should. And one of the simplest things that I find is so frustrating is, from a customer's perspective, I'd want to know how safe and how secure is my cargo, my shipment, or the choice of carrier provider, whether it's GHA, forwarder, etc. And I think people need to take more thought now on the whole chain. But if you do that, and if I wanted now today to compare safety performance indicators. It's very difficult to get people so you can have a comparison and see where you rank within the industry for your own good, to see whether you need to step up or do things differently. And then on top of it, and I'm sorry to be talking for so long, but this pandemic has taught us now that people need to be aware of risk and worst case scenario, and plan for worst case scenario and then adjust if it doesn't happen, rather than look at best budget scenario and then have to really strongly react when something does happen. And, I just think we could all come together a little bit more, really, really focused, and make certain things change. Sorry, Tom, to have spoken for so long. Peter, I apologize as well. Dennis, nice for bringing that data and the digitization in. Peter, what's your thoughts?
No, I think the answer must be yes. We must go fully for digitalization. The problem I foresee that our industry is so diverted with small companies. If you see to the freight forwarders spread it around the world, handling air cargo shipments, it's not only the top 25 names in the industry. It probably are 200 or even more companies globally. And do they have the financial means to make it happen? Or are you forced them to liaise with those bigger companies who are financially in shape to create an IT infrastructure to make it happen? And there, I think there is, when you're speaking to IATA, also a responsibility for them. They are not only representing DHL, Kuehne, Nagel, CEVA, DSV, they are representing the entire industry. And there I see that it will be giving a lot of pressure, but sometimes you have to crack the nut to make those decisions. And there in our industry, we are lacking. People are not making decisions that are good for the industry for the future. And that because they always want to find consensus. And if you keep trying to find consensus, we will not drive the bullet forward, and we keep having these discussions 5 years from now again.
Yeah, and that consensus and also convenience, Peter, because a lot of people also are not pushing what should be done because they're also concerned about their own tenure and how long they're going to stay in the positions that they're in, and they don't want to rock the boat. And coming back to the things that have been achieved, in Dubai, and I like Robert, we used to work up the road from Dennis, and you'd look up that road and you'd think, my goodness me, there's so many things that are able to be done. Why can't that be done more in the rest of the industry? And Dennis, I mean, you like you just said, from 48 hours to 180 minutes, things like that. Those are the messages that people need to see, but they also need to be able to share the data to see if they can actually adapt and do similar things themselves. And Dennis, I'm sure, especially in your position there, I mean, you've got no problem with data sharing.
But we also have to be clear, in that part of the world, they have the financial means.
Yeah. No, that's different.
They started from scratch. They could already implement, and they can decide because they have a dual function. When you are in Frankfurt Airport and you have to deal with all the infrastructure there, that is comparing apples with oranges when you look to Dubai, to Jeddah, to Daman, to Doha, because it's controlled by that particular airline. And that makes it, to make those decisions, Chris, much easier. They can, and they also are pushing forward like the KPIs that they set. But I think that everybody wants it, but it's much more difficult to do it in the Frankfurt, Londons, or Amsterdam of this world.
Oh, 100%, Peter. But what I'm saying is, whether you're a one-man band or whether you're a 10-piece brass band, the one thing that you need to do is you want to play music. And if you've got a desire to do it, and you can see how easy it is on one part to the other, then you need to. I think you need to go for it.
Chris, but you need a conductor to make it happen, eh? Those players, you need a conductor who they make the music, but somebody must make the tone, eh?
And they have to be strong, and they have to start laying things down, which is what the industry needs. Because I genuinely think the majority of people in the industry, they know what needs to be done, they know what should be done, and they know when it should be done. They're just ready and waiting for somebody in authority to say, right, now let's do it, so that they don't feel that they're going to lose competitive advantage or be affected as a result of being the first one across the line.
So, Chris.
And they don't want to hurt people. Eh? Sorry, Robert, go ahead.
So I'm just desperately trying to agree wholeheartedly with both of you, and that is completely the case. I think your point earlier on, Peter, was spot on. For every DHL, for every CEVA, there is a mom and pop forwarder who's got 1 or 2 employees that have been doing the same thing for many years, earning a good return and don't want to change. And when we as a handler are looking after multiple carriers, for every Emirates that is driving digitization, there are a number of other carriers who don't have cargo representation, just use a GSA or don't have anybody. And there's therefore nobody to engage within that carrier to say, we want to digitize the process, or we want to move forward to e-airway bill. And e-airway bill is part of digitization. And I don't think any of us want to be part of any panel discussions any longer where we all bang the table and say, e-airway bill's not in place, it's outrageous, the industry needs to change. We're the people that need to change the industry.
Yep.
And for me, I firmly believe it will happen over a much shorter period of time now. The reason being, we have a number of employees who are reaching the end of their careers, who've done the same thing for many years very successfully. And we're trying to attract new people into our industry, and we're actually struggling to attract new people into our business. They're looking at other industries, they're looking at other logistics providers. And that's largely due to the fact that when they come into one of our warehouses, because of some of the customers that we're looking after, they're given a pen and a piece of paper, not a mobile phone. And it's completely an alien concept to them as to how they process something with a pen and paper. So if we are not going to be embracing technology and digitization, we're not going to be able to attract the people that we need for the industry in the future anyway. So completely agree with both of you, completely agree with Tom's earlier point as well. It is a big challenge, but equally it is changing as far as I'm concerned at the moment, and will continue to change over the coming months and years as well for the better.
Yeah, no, and it's a very valid point what you put there, Rob, about the new generation and how different they are and their expectations. And you brought up earlier about, you know, some of the things that, in my opinion, and I'm sorry to say it, the press is overkilling, you know, these anxieties and all the problems that people are having. And a lot of the things that have happened during pandemic has caused people now not to be sure what to be expecting and what's normal anymore. But I think we as an industry now, we've got to change the way we train. We've got to change the way we look at future leaders, and we've got to change the way they understand what's necessary. Also, having multi-skilled personnel so that they can actually enhance their own personal value as well, and flexibility or agility. So there's a lot of things that we need to do. Now, on that point, and because I know there's a couple of hard stops here with regards to the panel, what I've been asking other people, and it's only just to have as like a success pin board, because we hope to have the conference in face-to-face format next year in Rome. But it'd be nice just to see what people felt they could put forward as three things that you, in your current positions and as representatives of your part of the industry, would do as a critical need to make the difference between now and, let's say, the next 9 months, because everybody's still looking at cash flow, everybody's looking at what's happening next. There's no real long term. But what critical things would you put forward if you were lucky enough to win the lottery and you didn't really have to worry about what anybody said on Monday morning?
Let me start maybe. I'm worried about Monday morning anyhow.
Good man, Tom.
You know, and I'm also not playing the lottery. I'm 100% accurate with the lottery numbers 5 minutes after 2000 hours. You know, the problem I have is 5 minutes before 2000 hours. Not so. Yeah. But in all seriousness, what I think what we learned out of the crisis and what is going to be the topic for the next 9 months, 12 months, and we underlined that for me. What we learned and the shortcoming is the seamless information flow between all the parties that are involved. And that goes into the digitization of and enhancing the way we operate. That is one major topic that I believe we need to address. And with the complexity we have, as we just mentioned, that with the many forwarders we have, the many airlines, ground handlers, and so on, that is one of the topics that we need to address and that we need to focus on. The next thing is that is the growing importance of the sustainability, be that now with the sustainable aviation fuel and so on. That is a topic, I believe, once the pandemic is cooling down, hopefully very soon, that this is the next hottest topic that we're going to have in our industry. Let's face that, sustainability, and overall, and the most important, that is the successful protection of our employees. That is still one of the major topics that we have. One of the most important thing is to keep the people safe, to keep the people protected. So these are the three topics from my side for the next months to focus on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Peter, do you want to go next? Because I think you're the first one that's got a drop off.
No, it's, I think for me, the most important thing is same as what Tom just said. Make sure that your teams are happy in the environment they work in, but also that we start to share our knowledge to the younger generation and not sitting on our knowledge. Yeah. So automatically, when you start to share knowledge and you start to be more open in how you executed the years in the industry, gives them the feeling that they are part of an industry that they can grow into. Those millenniums, they want to make a career from a forklift driver on year 1 to be the CEO in year number 3. But you have to manage that. And if you are open and honest and give them a career path and share your knowledge, what you gained over the years, that is for me one of the most important things. And that is with the people that work in our company, but also to be a speaker outside on universities, on colleges, that will bring people choosing to be part of our industry in the future. Because I also believe that is important to tell them that there are huge opportunities for those boys and girls in the logistics, in the air freight industry, for them to choose and not to work only for the Googles or for that kind of high-tech companies that are very sexy in the industry, and because they have great advertisements, they make great movies about working there, because I believe that we are the best ambassadors to get those people into our organization and make them aware, yes, you can make a career, and yes, you can have a good life when you choose to work in the air cargo industry, even looking after a pandemic, because there are always things happening. If it's a pandemic, if it's an ash cloud, whatever, there are always, and that makes it interesting, I think, for them to make that visible so that they can choose our industry as their employer of choice for the future.
Yeah, okay, good man. 2 more.
2 more.
Right, me coming quickly. Oh, so you got 2 more. I thought you meant 2 more people.
No. For me,
ahead.
That's okay. That's my most important thing. I'm getting older, eh?
Yeah, go on, Peter. 2 more.
No, I only have 1 more. And that is to make sure that we will start to share data as an industry. Yeah. Big data, we spoke about it earlier, is a key element how we drive a transparent logistics world, not only to our customers, but also to the entire industry. So sharing data must not be as difficult as what we spoke about 10, 15 years ago. Everybody was protective. Everybody was afraid to share because somebody could see something in data that was not appropriate. I believe that data sharing is the key driver in our industry for the future as well. So I would stop with those 2 because number 3, I probably have to think about it during the weekend.
No, it's okay. I put number 3 down as promoting the industry.
Good.
Because we are among the best. And I mean, look at all of us. All of us have been lucky enough, to travel from our countries of birth and work somewhere else within the industry, which is incredible. So, yeah. All right, Dennis.
So, Chris, I would say something that we need to definitely consider is, there is a new way of working, right? So if you look at what's really come through in the last 2 years, the last 18 months, we need to start embracing the way we operate today. If you look at what was achieved in the last 18 months with people having the ability to do these Zoom calls or using Teams across the network, it's fascinating. And I think it also shows that there's an element of trust that people are prepared to work hard, are actually prepared to go the extra mile. We've seen that as a carrier. I've seen that with many of our customers too. People are putting more effort in. And I think when you...
Okay, we'll stick with it because Dennis was on a good roll there. So let's wait to see if he comes back. He's just frozen at the moment. So, right, Rob, can you start yours before...
Yeah, do you want me to pick up there? So,
look at the new generation coming up. These people are used to using smartphones, are prepared to use...
Okay, Dennis, I hope you can hear me, my friend. If you can just hold there a second, we'll do Robert because you're cutting in and out. So thanks for your patience, Dennis. Rob?
So for me, Chris, look, it's easy to say some buzzwords at the moment, you know. So the three would be collaboration, digitization,
no.
and infrastructure.
I wouldn't accept them.
I'm going to say I'm not going to use the buzzwords. So let me talk about a little bit more detail. So collaboration for me is more about planning and flexibility. So that is being able to understand what is planned. And for all parties to be flexible. So, you know, where there is a demand to say to handlers, handle whatever we send to you, we need to be much clearer about what is the optimum time that works for all parties. So for me, more flexibility, more planning, and more understanding of each other's needs would be one. Second would be looking if we take that infrastructure buzzword to say we need accelerated development of cargo facilities around the world, whether that be in existing gateways that are capacity restricted and therefore we find more space available, or as we were discussing earlier, in those new airports that are very cargo friendly, that we find immediate solutions, whether they be sort of temporary facilities before the development is completed. So for me, that's about the infrastructure and the accelerated redevelopment. And really, it's just reiterating the point from the other guys as well. Looking after our people. So digitization is one thing about supporting the new generation and accelerating the process. But for me, that looking after our people is the most important element. We are so reliant on really key individuals, and nobody wants to run a business where you're completely reliant on one or two key individuals in your operation. But we have a number of employees where that is actually the case. And looking after those people is the most important thing for us. And it's not about looking after their well-being or their mental health. It's actually just being able to support them to get the job done. Okay, thanks very much for that, Rob. Dennis, sorry about that. We lost you. You froze in midstream. I answered for you, Dennis. So I'm sorry.
Robert, I'm sure you did a great job. So thank you for it. It's actually poetic justice. As I'm talking about technology being great, it hangs on us. So somehow we have to be tolerant of the technology too, I think, to some degree. I would like to add maybe 2 points quickly to add on to what Peter said a little bit is, you know, we talked about data and digitization, but I think one thing we need to consider is obviously this data standardization. You know, the earlier gentleman touched on there's so many different partners involved and everyone has their own API or their own EDI connection or their own data standard. I think standardization in the industry will actually move the needle forward. I'll touch on the point with this whole topic on e-freight and why is it taking so long. It's part of that reason is because the complexity of data, it's complexity of compliance and security. So that's one, that's the other one. The second topic for me would be, and it really comes close to heart for us as a carrier, as an airline, is really working to remove some of the red tape and at least making things easier. For example, if you look at when we had to now move from a passenger operation, getting our aircraft, you know, the mini freighters and the passenger freighters is what we call them, taking the seats out, getting these modifications done. These things take time. Before COVID, these things weren't really considered. It was sort of an ad hoc type requirement. It became a reality for us through the pandemic. We needed fast action with the likes of ICAO, with the likes of the civil aviation, we need to remove red tape. And I think we need the ability to move quicker. So that'd be the one, that's the third ask for me, Chris.
Right, very good. Thank you, boys. Listen, I know a couple of you have got, you've got things to do, and I just want to say, really, really appreciate your time, your support, and a lot of respect for all four of you in your positions and in the industry. And the industry's in safe hands, guys, I would imagine. I hope. So look forward to seeing you in Rome next year. Thanks very much. Good luck with everything you're doing, and wishing you all great success, and obviously keep safe as well. So thanks very much, guys.